Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on this edition of Business Daily. I'm Lee-Jun in Seoul. Let's get started with a look at today's highlights. President Park Geun-hye has been impeached. We take a look at what impact this would have on the Korean economy, as well as the financial markets going forward. What came out of the European Central Bank's monetary policy meeting this week amid strong expectations for a U.S. Fed rate hike this month? These stories and more coming right up. President Park Geun-hye has become the first Korean president to be ousted by parliamentary impeachment after the Constitutional Court unanimously voted to uphold the motion, following a 92-day power vacuum in the top office. Following the announcement, acting President and Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-ahn chaired an extraordinary cabinet meeting and said he respects the court's decision while calling for stability and a focus on maintaining order. Hwang also told Finance Minister Yoo Il-ho to focus on keeping markets stable and maintain a firm grip on issues that affect people's livelihoods. The Bank of Korea also held an emergency meeting to evaluate the impact that the impeachment ruling may have on market movements. And the country's corporate sector says it's now time to fill in the political power vacuum and step up efforts to revive the economy. Korea Employers Federation said the government and political parties need to work together to reduce confusion and focus on revitalizing the economy by creating more jobs. Korea's biggest business lobby, the Federation of Korean Industries, which found itself embroiled in the ongoing political scandal, also said it respected the court's decision and called for unity and collective wisdom. And moving on to markets to take a look at how the market responded to the news today and what the overall performance was like this week. We have our Business Daily's markets contributor Choi Jin-seok joining us on the phone today. Hello, Jin-seok.
Happy Friday.
All right, so it looks like the markets responded relatively well to the news. How are things looking on the last day of trading?
Both the Kospi and the Kosdaq market closed the week with a positive picture. The Kospi rose by 0.3% to close at 2097.35, while the Kosdaq followed with a 1% uptick to close at 612.26. The overall picture of the market seemed completely different after the Constitutional Court ruled it would uphold President Park Geun-hye's impeachment. Before the announcement, both the Kospi and the Kosdaq opened the session with slight losses. However, both indexes reversed this trend, entering positive territory after the decision was handed down. Most importantly, foreign investors shifted their position to buy on the Kospi, lifting the entire index. Investors seem to interpret the news as a catalyst to eliminate uncertainty surrounding the market. By sector, financials, communications, and securities firms performed strongly, while steel, non-steel materials, and insurance companies were sluggish.
Then how is the overall weekly performance? I mean, you just talked about the return of foreign investors.
Exactly. On a weekly basis, both the Kospi and the Kosdaq market enjoyed a decent rally of around 1%. As we just said, foreign investors who bought massive amounts of shares on the Kospi market played a significant role in such strong performance. Despite the concerns over China's retaliatory measures against Korea's bad deployment, foreigners showed interest in putting their money in one of the most undervalued emerging equity markets. By sector, communications, daily staples, and semiconductor companies enjoyed strong performance, while utilities, software, and chemical companies had a tough time.
So for now, it looks like the impeachment helped boost sentiment, but how about in the longer term?
In the near term, the decision is expected to give a boost to the Korean equity market, and that's mostly because the decision met market expectations with no surprise. However, the longer-term picture still seems to be mixed. Experts have similarly said that investors should shift their focus to fundamental market factors. And on top of that, we have major market events coming up as well. The U.S. FOMC is scheduled next week, and the Q1 earnings season is getting closer. Another thing that investors should keep in mind is the presidential election in Korea, which will now take place within 60 days. As we get closer to the election, share prices of companies that have any connections with heavyweight candidates can fluctuate, resulting in irrational movements in the entire market. So that's something worth keeping an eye on. This has been Choi Jin-seok for Business Daily.
And to tell us more about what issues may be at stake for the economy, Professor Yang Jun-seok from the Catholic University of Korea is on the phone with us today. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
All right, so as we heard earlier, financial authorities held emergency meetings today in response to the impeachment ruling. So what were some of the things that would have been at the center of discussion?
Okay, well, I think because the country's government and the economy has been sort of stuck in paralysis for a long time, and because this can be such a chaotic effect, I think what the meeting should have been about is, well, the story mentioned earlier also mentioned it, but stability and how to go on from here. But the problem is the current government is still working under an acting president. So it cannot really do any very large plans or very long-term plans. They can only do plans probably which lasts up to the emergency election that we'll have 60 days from now. So for the government at least, I think they're going to look at short-term stability more than anything else. Now, Bank of Korea, because they're supposed to be independent from the government, they would usually be taking a longer look, and in chaotic situations like this, they would probably lower the interest rate, but they have no room to lower the interest rate now because Korean interest rate is at historic low, and it's becoming almost a given fact that the U.S. will raise its interest rate next week. So I think everybody wants to try to have stability. They want to have easy money type of policies to try to get over this, but we're constrained.
Now, market analysts are saying that today's court ruling will actually help ease political uncertainties that have been rattling the country for months. So with that, what impact do you think President Park's impeachment today will have on Korea's economic policies going forward, as well as where should the focus be from here on out?
Okay, well, I tend to take a slightly different look than that opinion. I think we're looking at the beginning of the end of paralysis and chaos, but not the end itself, because now we have 60 days until the next election, and the population has been very much divided by this 최순실 Park Geun-hye incident. So until we get to the next election and the people make their opinions felt in the election, I think the confusion will continue. But at least now we can see the end in sight rather than just wondering when the end will be. So I think this will be, in the long term, something that's going to be good for the Korean economy. But for the next 2 months, I think we're going to be in for a lot of chaos and a lot of political infighting.
All right, thank you so much for your insight today. Korea's aggregate automobile production in the first 2 months of the year has dropped to the lowest level since 2010. According to Korea Automobile Manufacturers Association, local production was at 634,000 units as of the end of February, down 3% on year. A near 15% plunge in output by Korea's largest automaker, Hyundai Motor, was the largest contributor to this slide. The sagging performance comes on the back of growing concerns about the health of Korea's auto industry after it lost its place to India last year in global production, dropping one notch to 6th place. Prospects for the year ahead are not considered that promising, especially in the absence of government policies such as tax benefits to boost domestic spending. LG Electronics has rolled out its latest G6 smartphone today through the country's mobile carriers. The 5.7-inch Android phone features the world's first 18:9 screen with high-definition audio and dual 13-megapixel cameras, among others. LG says pre-orders have exceeded expectations, outstripping other previous models. The phone is priced just under $780, but will cost less when including promotions along with rebates by carriers. With Samsung Electronics Galaxy S8 smartphones set to be released next month, industry insiders say the market competition is heating up for premium handsets. Time now for a look through some important global business stories from the weekend. For that, we're now joined by Eunice Kim in the studio. Hello, Eunice.
Hello.
All right, so the ECB wrapped up its March monetary policy meeting on Thursday, and it looks like the ECB and the U.S. Fed are going to walk down a very different path.
Right.
But Mario Draghi expressed some very rare optimism.
He did. You know, the Eurozone economy, of course, had hit the ECB's 2% inflation target last month, putting it ahead of other major economies, including the U.S. So why has President Draghi recommitted to seeing its multi-trillion QE program through the end of the year? Take a look. As widely expected, the European Central Bank stood pat on rates, leaving its deposit rate at a record low of negative 0.4%. ECB President Mario Draghi, in the press conference that followed, seemed visibly more relaxed, saying the sense of urgency in monetary policy has left the room.
I would say that risks of deflation have largely disappeared. Market-based inflation expectations have increased noticeably. Also, those at longer-term horizons, even though they are still below the level that is considered to be adequate for pronouncing victory on the inflation front.
Headline inflation for the 19-nation bloc has jumped noticeably in recent months. Last month, prices rose by the most since 4 Januaries earlier, at 2% year-on-year. But the figure the ECB is watching is core inflation, which strips volatile energy and unprocessed food prices. That number remains below 1%, a threshold not crossed since August of 2013. Draghi said although internal risks are now less pronounced, the central bank has yet to see a convincing sign of rising underlying inflation, i.e. wage growth, which he called the linchpin of self-sustained growth. The ECB's 2.3 trillion euro bond purchasing program marked 2 years on Thursday, and the results are still mixed for the 10 trillion euro economy. While the more prosperous northern states like Germany and the Netherlands would prefer to see rates begin to climb to benefit savers' income, for their stagnant southern counterparts, that would be a nightmare. Italy's economy this year projected to grow only by 0.7%, with a banking crisis on its hands, has barely moved since the euro came to be in 1999. While it's unclear whether these distortions can be resolved under the current EU system, with key elections around the corner in the Netherlands, France, and Germany, the European Central Bank will likely wait through a few more months of economic data before it revisits its forward guidance.
And under the forward guidance as it is now, the ECB is going to start buying less bonds starting next month.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You'll remember the ECB had announced it would cut its bond purchases from 80 billion euros a month to 60 billion euros monthly starting in April. And Draghi had taken pains to state that this slowdown does not amount to tapering and that QE will continue at least through the end of this year to ensure the Eurozone economy is on firm footing. Now, that's a sentiment that he did reiterate last night. He sees rates staying, quote, at present or lower levels for an extended period of time, establishing the need for the bank to preserve very favorable financing conditions to reach its inflation objective. Now, on that note, the ECB did slightly revise up its inflation outlook for this year and next to 1.7% this year and 1.6% in 2018, and the projection for 2019 remained at 1.7%.
And this as crude prices are falling again, so we'll keep a close eye on those inflation numbers. Thank you so much for coming in today.
You bet.
And that wraps it up for today and this week. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll be back next week with more business news that matters to you. Until then, goodbye.